2, and 1.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of
2
Subtle
and
Asian Voices. And I'm your host, Daphne. And today I'm super excited because we have a very special guest with us, Trace. Thank you so much, Trace, for being on our channel. So Trace is an indie music artist, and she's here to tell us about her journey into the music industry. And we're really excited to find out what her experience has been like. So as always, guys, if you haven't already done that, please go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe. We really appreciate it. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right into this interview. So Trace, why don't you give us a little bit of information about yourself? Tell us what you've been up to, your name, your age, what you've been doing, where you're located, things like that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Trace. I am coming to you live from Los Angeles, Silver Lake specifically, and I am a musician, writer, singer, songwriter. I'm from Orange County originally. I moved here 8 years ago. I'm 33, a Gemini.
Perfect.
Don't like long walks on the beach.
Fair.
Yeah, I've been here for like 7 years and I do music for the most part.
That is so cool. Also, guys, FYI, the chat will be live. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to pop that in there and we'll go ahead and bring it up either throughout the interview or at the end of the interview. So we would love to hear from you. So Trace, if not walks on the beach, then what do you prefer doing? Because so you're right next
I
to
know. Why am I in California? I love walks around the reservoir. I like hiking. I do like being outside. I love this city because there's just so many neighborhoods that you can explore and just discover and stuff. I like roaming around and yeah, I like cooking. I'm a
cooking.
normal person. I'm a normal gal, you know?
Yeah, no, just like us, right?
Yeah, we're all the same.
Solid. So Trace, let's go ahead and dive into your journey into the music industry. So what made you want to be an artist and a songwriter, singer?
Yeah, I think that I never really wanted to do anything around music growing up. And so even though I grew up in a home of music, it was that normal kind of rebellion where you don't want to do what your parents did. And my mom's a singer. And so I thought it was cool. I was very into like, I wanted to be, first off, a detective. Like I wanted to be like Carmen Sandiego,
Oh shoot.
or like Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, like solving crime. I don't know. But I think after that, I really did want to get into kind of the writer world, and I loved advertising. I wanted to be, an art director. I loved. I think the word is not ideal, but like marketing, the idea of like you win people over with communication, and so I majored in business and communications in college. So I wanted to be like a madman, but like a woman, a mad
Fair.
woman. So yeah, I want to do that. But I think what kind of unlocked my interest into the art world is I think just divine timing because I always had a hobby of playing the guitar. Like in college I would write like poems and stupid songs and I would just sing to myself, like my college dorm like wall. I would never sing like for people. I didn't grow up doing talent shows. Like I hear like a lot of my friends who are in the industry, I love that they come from this place of music and they are brilliant musicians. And I envy that because I'm a horrible guitar player. But I managed to write songs and it was a way of just obviously expressing myself. But I didn't really know what that meant. I just was more like, it was just like a hobby. And so it wasn't until I moved to Los Angeles and I came here for a job in the magazine world. And I was an editor and it was fun and great. And I heard word from a friend from college and he wanted me to sing on his like album. And I was like, what makes you think I do that? Like I have no idea what you're talking about. So I was like, I love doing things I don't know how to do, especially when I don't care. I was like, oh, music, that's cute. Like no one cares. And he's really talented. So I sang a song on his record. It was a song that I wrote in college on my guitar, but like it was just like not a real song. And he recorded me. I sang into a microphone for the first time. I think it was in 2013 or 14. And I had so much fun. And that kind of fast forward I think a year later it came out, the song, and I was still working like 3,000 hours a week at this startup magazine. And I heard the song and I didn't like it. And it's a song I wrote, and it's not against how he mixed it, or I don't even know what mixing was back then. So like if you're a musician, it's like you sing, you record, and then the song gets mixed. And so like the track gets, played with and your voice gets played with. But I heard it and I didn't like it. And I remember I was at the farmer's market with my best friend, Rebecca, who you know, and she and I were having a beer or two, and I listened to it and I was like, I hate this. And she's like, why? I'm like, it just doesn't sound like me. So basically I started a Kickstarter. So how
That's
I got into it, how I got into like the art world was just me hearing something that didn't feel like me. And I was lucky enough to have a creative community with the magazine. I had a best friend who's really good at like talent, and I trusted her because I don't want to do things I'm not good at. Also, I'm like, oh, another singer, like that's so. I'm like, okay. So, but I did a Kickstarter. I had friends come to a backyard. I sang some songs that I wrote years ago on a guitar. I had a friend come. He helped play with me, and people were like, you sing? And I'm like, I don't know. You let me know. And so there's like a way more into that, but that kind of tumbled into just like, oh, people gave me money. So then I produced a record. I did an EP, and I could go into that and how that started. But I got into music because I heard something that didn't feel authentic to me, and it somehow worked.
I feel like that speaks volumes, because I feel like you as a person, getting to know you over the course of the past like year or so, you're, to me, come across as very genuine. You want to project something that is authentic to you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of trajectory kind of shot you into where you are today, which is so cool. So you touched on how you got into this profession. So you started making an EP, right? Would you mind telling us about that experience? Like, how did you meet people to create that EP? How did you end up, stumbling upon that? How did you find the ideas to create what you did? Because your EP is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It felt like just angels falling from the sky, because I was so wrapped up in this job I had. I loved publishing and I wanted to do more with that. But when I did this Kickstarter live show, I had so much, praise is interesting. Praise is something that I'm still like learning how to receive, and also how to not seek. But when you first get it, you're like, this is cool. But what that turned into is just really good people coming together. And my friend Brandon, who I went to college with, he was like, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I have 5 songs that I've written, clearly because we performed it together. And I was like, hey, this seems interesting. Can you produce these songs? And they're all acoustic, right? So I was like, I don't want to be a coffee shop singer. Nothing wrong with that. Just not me. And I was like, can you just turn this into like Sylvan Esso? And I was really big into Sylvan Esso. Like I still am. I still am. They're the best. So I wanted some electronic elements to it. And so if you listen to my earlier stuff, it's way electronic, and the timing of electronic music and the year that I did this, it became just perfect. So he produced my EP for me. He did a great job. I recorded it in my bathroom in my apartment. I lived with Rebecca at the time, my best friend, and I kicked her out and I recorded in my bathroom. I was in my bathroom while he was in my living room, and I did my EP and I sang, and I let him really get down to the nitty-gritty of producing what it sounds like today. And I had this project, this piece of work, and I thankfully knew some people in the community where I had like a friend of a friend who's a music blogger, and blogs were really big back then in 2016. They really changed your career, like blogs, which is crazy because it's changed. It's so different now. And a blog wrote about my single, and that like blew up. And then that kind of tumbled into Spotify reaching out to me. And I had like lunch with like the head of whatever at Spotify. And now she's my good friend today. And she was just like, hey, your single's doing really well, and it's like on a lot of playlists. Do you know why? And I'm like, no, Jesus, like I don't. And she was just like, we want to know why this is happening, but we also want to know how we can help you. And during that time, I met someone at a party who was like, hey, I love what you're talking. I was at like a weird fashion, like clothing party. It was not even about music, but this girl like heard me say something and she's like, "Oh, I love how you see blah blah blah." I don't remember, it's a blur, but I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Do you do music?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, I think she did hear my song or something and she wanted to help me. So she became my manager. She was like, "Can I manage you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't really know what that means." So in the beginning, it just became like I recorded something, I released something because a friend ran a blog. And then like this girl came into my life, Ryan, and she was like, "I want to manage you." And she knew someone who knew who worked at Sony. And so, and, so then that happened. And that's how I got my first signed single, which is my song Low, which is still the most played song. And that's, I think, how my career started.
That's amazing. So it's like a cascade of effects of just like networking from just like
people.
These relationships you formed in the past, right? It kind of started from there. And it kind of snowballed into something huge. And then here you are living your dream. Would you consider this now, I guess?
What was that?
Would you consider this like kind of like a dream? Because I know you said you didn't want to do this in the past. Would you ever have imagined like this would have happened?
I wouldn't have imagined this would have happened. And I would say this is for sure a dream.
Awesome. So a lot of people have a lot of questions for you. So you said ESO was one of your favorite influences from your music. What other artists have influenced you to be where you are today?
I love a lot of different people, but my mainstays have always been, I love Feist and the National, Leaky Lee. Like I grew up in a time where like that was like the indie vibe, like I love those artists and they're going to be forever like success. Like they're just like people I love and no one like who. They're like catalog artists too that they just keep making albums, which I love. But in today's world, it's like James Blake, Frank Ocean, Solange, like just cool ass people. Like my music sounds nothing like any of theirs, but I love their artistry and I love their ability to just sound like no one else,
And I feel like the indie genre in general is so unique in the fact that it doesn't sound like anything else. Everyone is so different,
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is super cool. So can you tell us about your responsibilities on a day-to-day basis as an artist? Like what do you do from start to finish? Like when do you start creating, things like that?
Yeah, I'm always curious of what people want to hear, with that question. I think that to be an artist who works for yourself is so hard because you have to be self-disciplined. So let's say pre-COVID and now COVID is different because I think being in this season of this pandemic, at the first quarter of the pandemic last year, as an artist, my day-to-day was sulking and being like, I have nothing to offer this world. Who cares about music? I need to be a nurse or like like I was just like, what are you doing? But I think the self, pity part of artistry is always is laughable. But I would say coming into a better routine now and we're getting through it. I would say that I'm trying to still instill discipline in my schedule, but I will say that I love goals. I love quarter goals. And so I think, for instance, before this year, let's say though, like I used to be signed. And when you're signed, you have expectations, you have to create music, you have to send demos, you have to make sure that they know you're working. So their money is being used well, which is a great pressure because I don't want to spend my days on end doing nothing, So I think every day I have to be really mindful of what keeps me well. I think that my songs tend to be emotional, honest, and like sad because I feel healthy. You know what I mean? So I think when I write from a place of health, I can go anywhere with it and feel secure in that. And so from a practical standpoint, like a day for me looks like you wake up and now I'm thanking God that I'm alive. and then you're like, okay, I got to move my body. I go on a walk, I go on a run, I do something. I linger a long time with myself so I can kind of face the day. And it just depends, right now I'm writing a lot of music for future projects and stuff. And so I try to write every day, whether it's on my laptop or like with my guitar. I try to make sure that I stay in tune with my emotions, which is really funny to be like, that's my job, is to be like aware of my emotions. But I write music and it depends, you know, if I have a song coming out, which I do, LOL, but like if I have a song coming out soon, it's like following up on cover art and mixing, like listening to different demos and stuff. And it's really anything I want it to be, which is funny. But I would say that it's important to stay physically healthy, spiritually like healthy and sane, and then to write, you know, and sometimes I'll write like a really good line and then I'll be like, that's all I'm doing today. Like it's so dramatic. I'm like, I'm beat. That took out so much out of me. You know, but some days, you know, you write like more than one song and you're like, this crap, but I recorded some stuff and I played around with like my garage band or whatever.
That's so cool. The process of creating is just so foreign to me because my brain doesn't work that way. And so when I put my thoughts out on paper, it's like I did this today. And that's it.
Right,
You know? And,
right.
like, you have your lyrics which are beautiful, and I'm like, wow, like my brain would never go there. So
Fair.
another audience member has a question about your lyrics and your music. What inspires you? How does that process work for you? I know you said that sometimes just put a one-liner and that's it. Like when you do get a kind of like inspiration, how does that typically translate for you, if that makes sense?
You know, I think the easiest answer before would have been just like, you know, dating. You know, like after, like if I had a date and it was like horrible, I would just go home and write it. Like most of my songs, I can pinpoint who I'm talking about. But I also think that I have found a lot of maybe encouragement and freedom in really actually valuing you know, I think I got caught up. I'm kind of like bouncing everywhere now, but like I think I got caught up for a minute when I was signed specifically. Nothing against being signed, but I got caught up in a minute of what people needed to hear, you know, or what a pop song was and what's catchy and do we go to the clubs and get drunk? Like, do I sing about that? You know, like I was very like, what do people want to hear? And I think my process now is how do I know what I want to write and what does that look like is it's like when I write something down or when I sing something, do I feel like kind of lighter? You know, like I feel like I really want to work from a place of confession. You know, it's almost this like, it's almost like a prayer, but also like a confession of just like, oh gosh, like that made me feel this way. Whether it is about a person, whether it's about where my career is going, whether it's about how I feel about myself or about the world, I think that I really, again, want to be a healthy person. And I think a big part of that is really saying hard stuff. And mental health is big too. I think that I think the beauty of music is you can explore. I could totally sing about like a dumb date, and I could also talk about like an anxiety attack, you know? So it's almost just like discerning where I'm at in this space and really trying personally not to worry about what do people want to hear. You know, like what's in right now, or like should I sing about like astrology, you know, like which is like maybe, but like I think I for a season I got caught up in like what's in versus like what's in my head.
Gotcha. I feel like with music, you can't for me the most impactful lyrics are the ones that come across as genuine, the ones that come across as real and like not just
Yeah,
singing like, you know, pop things and like, you know, getting hammered in a club, fine.
sure,
But
yeah.
the most impactful music that I've heard is just like, what is that artist feeling? And I feel like for you, that comes across as really genuine across your music. And that's something that really caught my eye. And then my friends who have heard you as well, they're like, wow, this is amazing. And they gravitate towards you because of that, Trace. So thank you so much for like
Thank
putting
you.
it out there through your music.
Thank you.
People are really excited about this because music is one of the things that keeps us going. Like during the pandemic, this has just been
Yeah.
chaos, right? People have turned to other things outside of their world to be able to not just distract them, but as a way for them to express it through your music as well. So I think that's amazing, and please keep
Awesome.
creating along those lines.
Thank you.
So can we go along on the journey that you had with mental health? Can we talk about your experience with your parents? And you said your mom was a singer. So how did she feel when you wanted to go into this industry? Other things that you wanted to go into that you would love to share? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. I'll start with, you know, my mom, and she still sings and she's my hero and she's a legend. And I I'm so grateful that she is like an Asian parent who is like, yeah, you should be a singer. You know, I think growing up, you know, when I was doing journalism and like had a real like job, I had benefits, she was like, she wouldn't know how to explain what I did, you know, to like her friends. I'm like, yeah, I'm an editor, mom. Like, you know, I edit, like I manage like a magazine. And she'd be like, cute, okay, like she'd call me a reporter or something. And so when I did music, she was just like, yeah, she knew that I could sing before I did, which is really funny. And I don't think I've ever said that out loud because I just think it's funny because I think she remembers me singing, and I don't remember me singing growing up, but she was like, you would sing, and she would tell her friends that I had a great voice, and I was like, where are you getting that? So she's been super supportive. I think that it's a different culture because the Vietnamese industry is different than the American industry. And so my mom is super impressed that I write my songs. She's like, how do you write music? I'm like, I don't know. And then she's like, what's a manager? What's a lawyer? What are, you know, what's publishing? And I'm like, I don't know. But like, I'm learning a lot about the anatomy of just, you know, the music industry, the American anatomy of the industry. And so I think that my mom has been stoked, and I've been going through a long journey with her with what that looks like because I'm nervous because she's the queen. So she's been to my shows, and most people comment on her than me when they come to my shows because they're like, your show is great, but watching your mom watch you was awesome. And then I cry. It's super emotional because I'm so honored to get to do this, and I want to make her proud, obviously. And I feel so supported by her. She has never once made me feel like I shouldn't be doing this. She has always said it's very hard and it must be harder for me, and that she wants to me to know that she knows that it's going to be a hard long road, but she's been very supportive in saying that. She said some cool things to me that I feel was very out of character recently in my last like big show, and she was just like, you're going to last a long time, so don't worry if you're not popping off right now, because I'm super hard on myself. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And she's like, it's going to take a while, but you're going to last a long time. So then I cry and cry and cry. So it's been a beautiful journey with her, with that, alongside of just kind of really learning about where she comes from with her own dreams, and to not make sure she doesn't put that all on me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that your mom was so involved with you in your journey. I feel like that's super important too. And then to hear about that, because a lot of people who want to go into the industry as an Asian American or as have to have Asian parents, right? We're always like,
Yeah.
success is the one thing. And so to hear that your mom is like, it's okay, it's a journey, embrace it, right? It's so different, and that it's so important to realize, you know?
Yeah.
So your mom is part of the Vietnamese music industry, right? So can you tell us about the differences? Have you talked to her about that, like for American music versus the Vietnamese industry? What was that like for both of you guys to have that conversation?
Yeah. I think that the Vietnamese industry is super unprofessional, and it's so unorganized. You know, my mom, I don't know how she like, my mom does, she just knows before COVID, obviously, like she would do shows still around the world, and she would just have it written on like a paper. Like, I'm like, how do you know when you're singing, where you're singing, who gets you those shows, who do you pay? And she's like, I do everything. And they still depend a lot on like CD sales. So they produce CDs. It's just like another, it's so not even comparable. I think the biggest thing is the rights of songs. I think that my mom, I think in the Vietnamese industry, there's like, maybe I could be wrong, but I think there's just like 5 writers, and then Vietnamese people just sing those songs. So a lot of songs, and every song my mom has sung has been someone else's song, and so nothing is original, but that's okay, I guess. It's how it works. And my mom has done so many covers. Like I grew up with my mom singing like Donna Summers and like Tom Jones, like super disco-y. Like we're very different in our taste in, I'm more of like a Joni Mitchell, Bob Dylan girl, and she's always like, why are you so sad? I'm like, I'll tell you later. Which we could just jump into mental health after that.
Yeah, do that.
But yeah, I think it's very just different. It's just done so differently. And
Yeah.
my mom has never wanted me to be in the Vietnamese industry. And what she said to me growing up was, if you want to sing, I can blow you up in the Vietnamese world. Well, she could. I could be this like Asian singer and just wear like just the prop. I could do it. And she was like, you can make some money. You'd be great because you're like my daughter. but she's like, I want more for you. Like you're gonna sing for the Americans, is what she would say. And so joke's on me because I am. So yeah, that's kind of like they're
Like
two different worlds.
your mom knew before you did, and that's so cool, to have
Yeah, it's wild.
with her.
Yeah.
Let's touch on the mental health aspect
Yeah.
of what you've been through. Would you mind sharing with us about that part of being in the entertainment industry, being in the music industry as an artist?
Yeah, not at all. I think that we meaning like people our age versus like our parents, we have a privilege of being able to be sad and emo, you know? Like I grew up like in the emo days, so I was like, yeah, like Dashboard and like Death Cab, and because life was easy. We lived in America for the most part. I was born here, and my parents were not, and so it was interesting to kind of learn about my mom's upbringing because I would ask her, why do you sing such like rock and roll, like fun disco songs? Like not why, but just more like what made you do that? Like why don't you like Joni Mitchell? And she was just like, oh, like, people didn't want sad songs. And I was like, oh, that's right, because Saigon was falling. So that's cool. And so I think for me, learning about that has really humbled me in my endeavor of being an artist who is emotionally like, you know, heavy. I prefer this sadness because I feel like I know it well, but it's not because I have my mother's sadness of her like past. It's more of the sadness that I feel like I've been allotted to experience. No one has had a perfect life, and I grew up like relatively well, but everyone has their own story. And so I feel like my mental health around, well, my culture, it's still being formed because when I wrote some more honest songs recently, like in my last EP, I was really hesitant of my parents hearing them. My earlier stuff, like Heavy Shoulders, was my first single ever that I released, and I just wrote it. I don't know why I wrote it. I don't think I was depressed, but I think I was, because when I wrote that song 4 years ago or whatever, 5 years ago, people would respond with such kind comments and being like, this really spoke to me. I struggle with depression. I have PTSD. Like people from who were like fighting in a war reached out, and like young people reaching out. I felt really honored and really sad. And that was interesting. And that kind of really helped me pivot into my writing more intentionally. But I didn't really know what I was facing until recently. I started writing about my father. And that really opened up this mental health thing for me in the sense of writing more intentionally, because my parents are divorced, but my dad, he suffers deeply, deeply from depression and anxiety. And I think that was a part of me. And I grew up very anxious, didn't know why. And so when I wrote this song on my last EP I wrote a song called When I Was Young about my dad. But before that, I released a single called Anxiety. And again, like I said before, I'm not about like, let's write about anxiety because it's cool. I really wanted to make sure that I wrote it with discernment, because that's a lot to say to the world. And I'm not a spokesperson. I am not here to be like, you can be free from it. But I'm also not like saying, come on in and let's be anxious forever together, because I don't believe that either. I just really wanted to do something that felt necessary in my process and in my time. And I partnered with NAMI, which is like an organization for like, National Health Alliance, and they've been super helpful in my rollout with like this mental health stuff. Anyways, so just writing about anxiety was interesting. And I would say the biggest, coolest thing that's ever happened with my music around mental health is that I released a song called Anxiety, and my dad called me. And my dad, we don't really talk. We talk now, which is awesome. But 2 years ago, we didn't really talk. And he just was like, why are you writing this song? And I was like, oh, hello, good to meet you. Like, haven't heard from you in a while. And I just told him, I was like, I wanted to kind of share with what I was going through. And he kind of unraveled and was sharing with me personally what he's been through. And anxiety was this lift off with our relationship, and my dad being very worried that I had his anxiety. and that I had his, depression. And for a while, I thought I had inherited it, and I thought it was a part of me and it couldn't leave me because it was in my blood. But I've had some cool spiritual moments and healing and therapy, and writing this music has really helped me understand my melancholy ways. And so like that's my father. And so I'm not close with him. And then the other part is my mom. She doesn't get it. She's like, what's anxiety? So that might be an Asian mom thing. I think my mom knows what it is, but she doesn't know the word for it. So I would say that writing about mental health has been hard and awesome because my parents worry about me being sad when I'm trying to tell them, you actually need to be sad so you can feel your feelings, so you can heal. Because I want to heal. I don't want to like pretend everything's okay because it's not.
Yeah,
That was a long story, but yeah.
No, thank you for sharing. I mean, anxiety is so important to talk about because I don't think people have the idea of what anxiety, the media has portrayed anxiety to be.
Yeah.
Everyone experiences it differently, right? Like sometimes it comes out in like a very physical form. Sometimes it's more on a lower level that you don't see on the surface. And I feel like being able to create that and have that music, I feel like helped your dad to open up too, which is huge, right? And I don't know about your experience. So your parents, you were saying that aren't typically very like stereotypical Asian parents, right? But for me personally, like for my parents, I don't know if I could ever get on that level with them and explain to them like what my anxiety feels like or what my depression feels like, because I remember going through that with them, and that was difficult because it was hard to share, and they didn't understand. They wanted to help so badly, like what can we do for you because we love you, but we just didn't bridge that gap, right? Do you feel like your music has kind of created that bridge for you guys between you and your parents? What is that like with your mom? Is she able to understand and get a deeper level from your music?
My mom is like the best, but she's also very like, when she hears my songs, she's just like, more beats, more beats. And I'm like, Mom, we going the other way, baby. Like I'm getting actually slower with my music. But I think it's a working bridge because I don't know if it's a language gap either. My parents, their second language obviously is English, but my mom speaks English to me because she's very insistent. But there might be a language gap in that when I do release music. I think where the gap narrows is more of just the conversations we're having more these days. I think that I'm in a personal place of, I think it's okay that our parents might not really ever understand us. And I think that they'll know us by how we love and how we love them and how we love ourselves. And I will try my best. And, for instance, I told my mom I was going to therapy and she was like, why are you going to therapy? Do you not know yourself? Oh, and I'm like, okay, Carol, I gotta go. Like it's almost you can't even like try to talk to them. It's more of this thing of just like, I'm like, hey, I didn't grow up with a dad. So do you think that kind of messed me up a bit? And she was like, well, I didn't. She's like, I didn't really either. And I'm okay. And I'm like, are you? So, and I think to each his own. I think we're in a new generation, and the bridge is there. Music helps for sure with my dad, like definitely. With my mom, we've been so close. I think music will always be a part of how we communicate with each other for sure.
With that being said, there's a question about that. Would you create music with your mom? Ever thought about doing a track with her as a singer?
Oh my gosh, you guys, people keep saying that, and I'm like, no. Listen, that's cute.
I'm just curious.
She would love it. She would love it. She would love it. She would overpower me, and she would take the main chorus. She would do everything. She'd be like, just sing in the back. I will never say never, and I think that that's a really cute sentiment, and I understand it. And so I'm trying to reach down inside and see why I feel like grossed out by it. Like, is it, am I embarrassed? Am I ashamed? I'm like, no, I don't really know. I don't know what it is yet. I need a minute, but maybe.
Gotcha. Someone is also asking us if your mom has a YouTube channel, because there are Viet parents and other Vietnamese people who are looking for Vietnamese music. It's like, I want to hop on YouTube. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a link to that later on, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I started her YouTube channel.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a mess out there though. I don't know how to like aggregate it because we're the owners of it, right? But everyone has all these videos of my mom. So I think it's like Carol Kim Music, but I'll let you guys know for anyone who wants to listen or have parents. Yeah.
Fair. We're gonna link it in that channel as well later on.
Perfect. Yeah.
So would you mind sharing with us about some obstacles that you face as an Asian American woman in the US industry? Because you were saying there's a little bit of an overlap there. So would you mind sharing with us about that experience that you had?
Yeah, I think being a woman is hard enough in the industry, and I am super grateful to have started a little later in my life because I feel like I've never had a bad experience per se, like in the studio, but I've worked with a lot of men, and I've been in a lot of studios with men that I didn't know, older men. It's always been like, this could have been weird, but I'm so grateful that I'm older. Not saying that it's not that if you're younger it's horrible, but I don't know. I just feel like I came in with knowing who I am, and so I think being a woman, it's like being a woman has turned into an advantage in the industry, and it's getting better, and I'm meeting more women who produce, which is awesome. As an Asian woman, I don't know. I feel like I'm still reconciling what it is to be an Asian woman because I think as an artist, I just want to be an artist, right? And when I was signed to Ultra, which is under Sony, it's a dance label. It was 2 years ago. I was really worried that I would be seen as like an Asian artist. And I say that with like humility because I didn't know what I was saying. I think I was too proud. I'm like, I'm just me. Like, don't put me in a box. And I'm realizing that I'm an Asian American artist. And I think that for me, I'm probably going to lose your question, but just kind of wrangle me back in. I have seen the importance of being an Asian American in this industry because there aren't many Asian Americans in this industry. I think that K-pop's awesome. Like, I think that's what's happening there is amazing. And I think seeing other Asian artists like in my realm has been more interesting these days, and I'm working with some, and there is something about that community where I didn't really understand or realize I had an advantage in, and I don't think I knew the weight of my role, even though I'm just me. I have like 50 strong fans, but like I didn't know the gravity of being Asian American until I toured. And when I toured, most people that would come up to me were Asian Americans, and they would ask me where I'm from, and it was awesome. And it's awesome to meet like younger women, like young girls, being like, "Oh, we're Vietnamese too," and I'm like, "Oh my god," it's like I'm here for it, and I think the role that I get to play is a very unique one, and I think that the stereotypes behind that I don't feel like they exist with me, which is nice. I don't know what that is. I don't even know what a stereotype would be for like an Asian American like artist, but I do know that I kind of want to be the first Asian American artist to win a Grammy. Like that's where I'm like, I've always said that, and I'm kind of like over it now, but like I kind of want to be the first something, and I think there's so much room for that in my world, and I don't know. I don't know.
No, thank you for sharing about that, because as an Asian American woman, we don't see as much success in these industries. A lot of our success as Asian American women come from like business. You know what I mean? And so a lot of that is the perpetuation of like the culture that we grew up in and the things that we're expected to do. And then to see an Asian American woman successful in the creative industry is such a new thing. I mean, like Crazy Rich Asians was something that came out, right? People think Asian American artists, they don't think indie artists and American industry creating awesome. They think very Asian centric. We're in like K-pop, C-pop, or like all that cheesy karaoke songs, right? That's what people think about when they think the Asian industry. And to have you portraying who you are and your honesty and all your emotions out in your music is so unique. And I feel like that's why a lot of people have gravitated towards you, which is awesome.
Thank you.
What advice do you have for, young women or even like Asian American men who want to go into the industry, looking into breaking into the things that you've done so far? What advice do you have for them?
Great question. I would advise you to, I guess it's really helpful to like say out loud why you're doing it.
Mhm.
You know, I think that if you want to, for me, I just really wanted to like win a Grammy. But like that's too obscure, that's too wide, you know. So I think for me, but also that changes over time as you do it. Okay. So my advice would be to create the work first. I think that if you're worrying about like who's going to manage me, or like how am I going to get on this thing, or how do I get on Spotify's playlist, like okay, sure, like those are okay. Those are like obvious things to worry about, but you have to create the music. So if you want to break into music, I hope you have songs. Like you have to have music. You know what I mean? You can go to all the parties, you know, whatever, like after COVID. Like you can go to all the networking parties, you can know all the people. But if you don't have stuff to show, like it doesn't matter. It still feels the same with me now. Like I have old stuff, but I'm like, doesn't really matter. I gotta keep going with some new stuff if I want to keep moving forward. And so I think it's creating the work itself is my advice, and learning your voice and knowing that your voice will change and evolve, but just really kind of I would just encourage you to do it for like the good reasons. You know, I think the things that you feel might last, though I'm struggling myself with what that is, but create the work. And also, secondly, for sure, surround yourself with people who know you and who are also creative, you know?
Absolutely. For me, a community is so important too, because community is
Yeah.
what brings you up, but creates all these connections. And I'm sure you experience
Yes,
that too.
exactly.
Yeah. So can you tell us, when you talk about success and Spotify and things like, what does success look like for you?
Success looks like for me is, let's go back to 2017. um you know, like I was saying earlier, I think praise is interesting, and I don't think that you have to be successful to have praise. And but also I'm still kind of going through the motions of, you know, success isn't money. Success isn't a pop chart. You know, my like woo woo heart answer is that I know what I know, which is success is when you create work you're proud of. Like that's it. So I'm a very successful person. You know, like success is like being your freaking self and being like, yeah, I did it and I do it again. Like it's almost like, you know, do you do it for yourself or do you do it for like people? And I think that for me, I've kind of learned to kind of, I love doing it for both. You know, I don't do it just for me because I'm like, I'm very business minded too. So I'm like, no, it's for people. I got to share this. But I
Yeah.
think for me, success once looked like for me signing to a label, which I was like, dope. Success once was getting, you know, 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Awesome. Success looked like I was on a cover of a playlist. Those are early on stuff that I was like, oh, this is what success is. Because I didn't know, music was so new to me. And what was given to me was really extreme measures of success. I would say proudly that I popped off real early.
Yeah.
And now, so humbled, I don't have the same career. And I also don't feel like I'm the same person though, which is good. And I think that I've learned a lot and I've had really good people stand by me during my journey in my career. And though I have new management, you know, I still have the same people, like the support system since day one. And I think that success now is still a little bit slippery for me, because I will say I want to quit every day because I'm just so dramatic. I'm dramatic and I want what I used to have, but I don't. You know what I mean? Because like I'm actually making music for the first time that I'm so obsessed with. And so I think that that needs to be like what I call success. And so I bounce back and forth because the world is the world and I want to be a part of it and I want to be cool and I want to be known. I want to be known, Daphne. Like I want to, you know what I mean? Like I want to be freaking known. I want to buy my mom a house. Like I want to do those things. And I think I will. I just think it's going to look really different in my life.
I mean, you're well on your way to success, Trace. You're already
Oh
there.
my
And
gosh, thank
we see
you.
you everywhere, which is fantastic.
Thank
Um,
you.
a lot of someone actually asked about how you stay grounded. Would you mind talking about your religion? So one of our audience members was asking, does religion help you stay grounded in your emotions and your success? What does that look like compared to your expectations and your parents' expectations and things like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that I personally believe in God, and I feel like, to say you have a calling is like so theatrical. It's like I have a calling and I must write the songs. But I will say that I am so honored that I literally get to write music, and then I can sing it, and then I can record it, and then I can release it, and then someone can hear it.
Yeah.
Like, that is an honor and a blessing. And if that song can make anyone feel less alone, if that song can make anyone feel closer to goodness, I'm here for it, and I can cry about it all day. And so I think for me, what helps me stay grounded is knowing that, like, I don't do it for myself. Even though I want all the things, I'm like, give me a Grammy. It's like, my favorite part of my career is getting to have conversations with, like, fans. Is a weird, it's hard for me to say fans still, but kind of what helps me stay grounded are the stories that I hear from people. And my favorite story that I've said in the past in interviews is that this guy was at my show, and he was in my Portland show, and my manager was like, hey, I have her kind of tell me if there's anyone, like, at my, like, merch table after a show, and she's like, hey, this guy was, like, singing your whole set, and he's by your merch table if you want to come out. And I'm like, I'm coming. I'm like, no one, I was like a newer artist back then, and I'm like, who knows my music? And so I ran, and we like talked, and he was just talking about how much my music meant to him. And obviously it's flattering and great, but then he kind of continued and opened up and was like, as, like, someone who's gay and a Latino, I just want to thank you for making me feel, like, seen and heard. And I was like, what is happening in my head? I was like, what is happening? I am neither of those things, and he felt seen and heard. And so that's what keeps me grounded. Like, what keeps me grounded is, like, I think God trusts me, I hope, to say the things that I need to say. I'm not gonna cry again. I always cry when I talk about this. But I think what keeps me grounded is the truth. And the truth is that, like, that we all experience this universal ache. And if I get to, like, sing about that ache and you get to feel seen, like, that's all I want. And so I don't do it for I ultimately don't do it for, like, the world. I don't do it, meaning, like, I don't do it for, like, the Grammy and the Spotify playlist, even though I love it. I love when I'm on a spot, I love it because it's like, who wouldn't,
Cool.
But what keeps me grounded is the stories and the people that come with those stories.
That's so cool to be able to hear that. I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah.
touched many lives, and to hear that impact in person must be a different experience altogether. Especially back then, you were a new artist, but imagine now, years later, right? Here you are. I'm sure there's a lot of people who listen to your music and they're also feeling seen and heard. And I feel like with God trusting you with that, absolutely, 1,000%, He's created this journey for you, and here you are living. And then this is so cool.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few questions from the audience, actually. So let's see. So people want to know, do you feel pressure with the expectation of being a beacon now for Asian American music artists? When we were talking about that topic, how does that feel as in terms of, like, being in the spotlight?
Well, if we can just spread the gossip that I'm a beacon for Asian Americans, that would be great. Just like Trace the Beacon.
That should be an album cover, please. Will you
Oh
be
my gosh.
showered in, like, a beacon of light, Trace? That'll be amazing.
Oh my gosh, just like doves behind me.
Absolutely, yeah.
I like pressure, and I'm again, I'm honored to be any type of voice for any Asian American. So I think that, yeah, I'm like, bring it. Like, I would love that. Like, it forces me to deal with my own stuff too, of just, like, being Asian American. And it's like, okay, so, like, what now? Like, what can I do? Like, someone tell me, like, I'm open for conversations around what that looks like to be a good citizen, you know, in
Yeah.
this industry. And yeah, I love the pressure. I'm down for it.
I mean, you're a beacon, Trace. Let's do that. I feel like that's next
That
album.
is
Maybe.
that word is too much. That's like too highly regard. I'm like, I'm trying to shine some light, but like let's take it.
I'm all for it, Trace.
Oh
Um,
my God.
and then as of right now, someone asked, what do you think is a hot spot for an aspiring artist to move? Is it LA? Is it New York? I know you said you were thinking about New York before.
So an artist, do they mean music?
I think specifically music in this case. Yeah, music artists to move to.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's Los Angeles through and through. Yeah,
Perfect.
I have friends in New York, I have friends in Nashville. I have, worked with people like from London and Paris even, and they're like, London's cool, but that's like another world. Like if you're English, you should be there. I wish I was an English artist. Like every English artist, I'm like, why am I not you? But in terms of being an American, 1000% Los
Mhm.
Angeles, unless you want to be a country music star, go to Nashville.
Fair. Good
Yeah.
to know. Okay, and then the last thing I did want to cover with you is, can you tell us about a time in your career where you kind of struggled? And you said you want to quit every day, but tell us
So
more,
dramatic.
because that I feel like that is a lot to kind of take in, because you have these big dreams, right? Because you
Yeah,
have lost so much you want to do and
yeah.
accomplish. Would you mind telling us about that challenge and that journey?
Like the last time I felt
Just
like
in
I
general, about a time that you wanted to quit it in your career, you wanted to, you struggled or something, and then how did you overcome that?
yeah, I think that I had my EP release show for my last EP like hell in October of 2019. And that was my last show. That was also my last day with being signed. And I think that what I struggled with was this realization that my expectations were through the roof, because I was like, I started here. That means I should keep going, especially when you sign. And I think that my what came out from signing didn't really hit any type of expectation. And I felt like my challenge with that was more just like, maybe I'm not the artist I thought I was, or maybe I'm not the artist you think I am. So I failed you guys. Like I probably shouldn't say this, but like I was surprised I wasn't dropped, you know, because they work with such bigger people, and but we took a chance on each other for sure. And I loved the people I worked with. I was just always shocked that like they couldn't do anything with me. And I'm like, do something with me, like put me, I want to be on Tiny Desk. Get me on Tiny Desk. And they
NPR.
and yeah, and that's not their forte. And so I think that was I've had a lot of setbacks, but I think that was one that really made me reevaluate, are you even doing this for the right reasons? And I definitely felt like a failure. I felt like I failed a whole company. I felt like I failed my management. I felt like I failed myself, and what helped me get through that, ironically, was, well, the following year was COVID. And what helped me get through that was a really, really like long look at the stuff I was making versus the stuff I wanted to make, and a long look at just like what failure is and what success is. And I think failure would be comparison. Failure would be doubt. Like failure would be a lot of things that I was kind of welcoming too strongly. And so I've had the year to kind of express without going too much into it. I'm writing a screenplay, and I feel like I'm healing a lot, and I'm getting through that first setback through writing my story of where I come from and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
That's awesome. I feel like that's going to be a huge impact, especially like people who want to go through that journey with you. People want to walk with you and kind of see that, especially in the Asian American community as well, seeing your journey with parents and having that be a part of your career to be where you are today is awesome. So we're
Yeah.
looking forward to that screenplay. Tell us more about that when that does come out,
Yeah. Thank
and
you.
out there to the audience and things like that.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling us? So let's let's go into advice. Is there anything that you would have told your younger self today, to in regards to your journey and where you are now?
Advice.
Mm-hmm.
Advice.
What would you tell yourself?
What would I tell myself?
What would you tell your younger self if you were to go back today and be able to be like, child Trace versus now?
Speak up. I
Mhm.
think that I don't think it's fair to be like, it's such an Asian thing to be quiet, but it's like, maybe. Like, I don't like conflict, or I didn't. I was very like, sure, 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 sure. So I think I would tell myself just to like trust what you want to say and don't be afraid to like give your opinion.
Mhm.
I think that I personally defer a lot to like professionals. So I'm like, if you're good at this and you're working for me, like just okay, great, whatever you think. If you're like a dope producer and you're like, I think you should, and I'm like, great. Like I would just be very open. I'm just like, yeah, I actually don't care. Like I'm not a perfectionist with things, but I would tell my younger self, like, if you feel something amok, just like speak up. Like it's totally okay to like say what you want to say and to feel the things you want to feel. And I think at a practical standpoint, I would tell my younger self to get a better lawyer sooner. I had a horrible one in the beginning, but I have like the best one now. But
Mhm.
I almost walked into some horrible deals. And so I would say definitely like my advice would be like get a great lawyer before you get anything else.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
lawyer before manager or manager first?
Oh, 100% lawyer before anything. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, good to know. I'm sure your guys
Yeah.
will appreciate it too. And being able to speak up is so important because it kind of is an Asian American thing, actually. The whole like model minority myth. We are told to not speak up and just
Yeah.
stick it down and go forward, and that's it.
Yeah.
And you're breaking all these stereotypes, which is huge because we feel afraid to do that, and to
Yeah.
see ahead of you and seeing like it's okay to do this, and people actually want to hear what your voice has to say is
Yeah.
a huge thing. It's
Yeah.
really empowering, especially for Asian American women who hit this like glass ceiling eventually, right? You have to be able to speak up, and
Yeah.
really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, so last question from the audience. You got 4 minutes left. Who is another Asian American artist you've met? People want you to collab with Aquafina, Year of the Ox. What do you think
Oh my
about
gosh, let's get her. Where is she? Nora. I love Nora. Oh gosh.
Shout out to her right on this channel.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Aqua. She is killing it, you guys. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm a big fan of Mitski. I think she's awesome.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I don't know if how that would work. I like Peggy. Peggy, is it Gal?
Okay.
She's a DJ. She's cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of mostly like women artists. I feel like it's hard for me I like love a lot of guys and stuff, but I just feel like these Asian, I feel like there's someone named Haley. There's so many like new artists that I'm like, you're cool. I have like a list. I have like a playlist of all artists that are Asian American.
Please share that. I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, definitely. I'm like blanking. I mean, Joji is really cool.
That's awesome.
He's a guy. He's
Mhm.
awesome. He's like blowing up. Anyone from like 88 Rising, if you guys have heard of that, like listen, if anyone knows 88 Rising, they're the coolest group of Asian artists, and I can't infiltrate. I'm like, someone include me, like put me on a playlist. They're just the coolest people, and I'm like, I can't get into that club. I don't know why. It's fine.
Okay, we're gonna try to do that our best. Advertise it
Yeah.
on everything. 88. Let's go.
Yeah. Thank you.
So in the last couple of minutes that we have, do you any have final tips or advice? Anything you want to put out to the world? Shout outs, things like that.
I guess from being on this podcast, this live stream around being Asian American, and like I think that it's so important to own, not only to like know that you have a voice, but to own it. And it's gonna come, and know that it's gonna come out like you have your own voice, Daphne, in the work that you do, like 9 to 5. Like it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a singer. Like you have a voice and a story, and the people that you encounter like need it. And I guess I would just say like wake up every day, like really asking yourself like who am I? you know, and are you that person throughout the day? And I think it sounds like so poetic, you know, and I get to be poetic, but it's like being Asian American, I'm learning more and more each day is like it's so special. And we're in this time now in the world where people are like, oh, they're actually interested in our voices throughout all the industries, you know, specifically like entertainment industry. And I think if you have any inkling or any interest in like living a full life, I would say to really recognize that you have a story and a voice no matter what.
Sounds good. And thank you for sharing that, because that kind of ties into what this channel is about, subtle Asian voices. We want to hear the voices of Asian Americans in the community, put that out there. And we really appreciate having you on our channel, Trace. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we really appreciate the time that you take in. And again, we're going to link your YouTube channel and your Spotify down there, guys. Please follow it. And then if you already like and subscribe this channel, we would really love to have your support, and so that way you don't miss any more cool content from people like Trace. So we're going to wrap this up, guys. It's 12:30, so we really appreciate y'all who tuned in. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Catch y'all later. Have a good Saturday.